coming up to me, I didn't even know French immersion existed. I didn't know that there was such a thing. So it's an opportunity. I think the success is just the opportunity for francophones to see flesh and blood anglophones who have learned French, and for anglophones who have spent all these years learning French to finally meet and interact with flesh and blood francophones. It's very rewarding after going through this, especially if you've grown up in a milieu that is entirely anglophone. And it was the case for me, K to 12, doing French immersion. Then, come to the University of Ottawa, and I get to use to speak in French with real francophones and with real francophones. It's an enriching experience. So that is a success, but also for the teaching of history, just having people in the same room who are from different backgrounds is, I think, essential or very useful for the teaching of history. This past semester, I taught a course on Anglophone-Francophone relations, the history of Anglophone-Francophone relations in Canada. Of course, totally uncomplicated, right? There's, and everybody has completely the same version of history. No, of course not, right? The past is the past. We study the same events, or some of the same events, but we all have very different interpretations of those events. And just the fact that in a room with many francophones, Anglophone students can't make the same assumptions or sweeping statements about French Canada or about Quebec. And the obverse of that is that the francophones, once they're aware that there are Anglophone kids in the class, I can't make those sweeping generalizations about Alberta or about Saskatchewan, or about English Canada, so it forces people to reflect, to think critically about the generalizations that they've made, because sitting there in the room with them is the exception to the rule that they have made in their head. And so
challenge?
Biggest
challenge? I guess I'm going to have to rush things a little bit.
Biggest challenge, it is always, of course, on se gêne quand on parle dans notre deuxième langue, et c'est toujours le cas pour beaucoup d'anglophones. I'd say about half the Anglophone immersion students participate very actively in conversation. The other half are very
j'ai seulement travaillé en éducation. Alors, d'entendre la perspective d'abord des étudiants et puis ensuite celle de Rémi, j'ai bien aimé ça. Très riche. Merci.
attend? Oui, on va attendre. So, good late afternoon. Most of you know me, but for those who don't, my name is Marie-Josée Hamel, and I'm the director of CERBAL, which is the research center of Ilob, of Olib. Before presenting our last but not the least invited speaker this afternoon, I would like to congratulate the organizers of this really rich symposium on immersion. So Alice, Hélène, and Catherine, congratulations for what I refer to as a macro symposium. So it's not entirely a colloquium, but also like a big event. So well done. I have a little bit of a biscuit suddenly going down. Thank you very much. Emotions, no. Je suis ravie de rencontrer des gens nouveaux dans des contextes nouveaux. Et quand on nous demande de faire la présentation de quelqu'un, ça nous amène à aller lire sur les travaux de cette personne. Et c'est ce que j'ai découvert à travers un site WordPress. Donc, si vous faites une recherche Xavier Villa sur WordPress, il a un très beau site qui est un blog, mais aussi qui fait un état de l'ensemble de ses travaux. Et donc, bienvenue chez nous. Le professeur Xavier Villa est professeur des universités, donc au département de philologie catalane de l'Université de Barcelone. Il est directeur du Centre universitaire de sociologie et de communication, sociolinguistique, et de communication de cette université. Je suis en catalan, là, sur la feuille ici. Et il est membre du groupe d'études sur la variation, aussi de la Société catalane de sociolinguistique et de l'Association internationale de pragmatique. Ces champs de recherche sont la sociolinguistique catalane, vous allez le deviner, alors la politique linguistique, l'éducation bilingue, la langue en contact, le bilinguisme et le plurilinguisme, l'analyse des pratiques langagières, la démo linguistique et l'implémentation terminologique. Alors, on compte dans ces projets de recherche courants, encore une fois, je traduis en français du catalan, la configuration des compétences linguistiques et son évolution dans les communications plurilingues, une analyse sociolinguistique à partir d'une école de Catalogne. Je peux rectifier. L'impact du modèle scolaire, ça c'est intéressant, c'est un projet qui se termine, je pense. Donc là c'était un nouveau projet, celui qui se termine. L'impact du modèle scolaire sur l'intégration socioculturelle et linguistique de l'élève d'origine immigrante. Donc ça c'est un nouveau projet, je pense, dans lequel vous embarquez. Donc il y a dans le programme deux publications importantes, donc que vous avez lues par Xavier Villa. Et d'autres que je vais vous nommer, donc deux titres en catalan et des titres en anglais. Alors, et je vais les traduire vers le français. Donc, qui aujourd'hui parle le castillan? Qui aujourd'hui parle, c'est bien ça, hein, le castillan, en Catalogne? Une approximation des mots linguistiques. Donc, c'est une publication toute récente, là, 2016. 2015, alors j'aime bien « ¿Qué pasará con las lenguas dominantes y las minoritarias ?» Donc, que se passera-t-il, hein, avec les langues dominantes et les minoritaires? Des publications en anglais que je retiens, qui sont récentes aussi, Bilingual Education in the Officially Plurilingual Autonomous Communities of Spain, des publications collectives, Is Science Really English Monoglot? On en a parlé avec une discussion ici tout à l'heure en table ronde. So, Language Practices at the University Research Park in Barcelona. Promoting language use in the school environment, some lessons from Catalan-speaking regions. Et finalement, dans les publications récentes, parce qu'il y en a vraiment beaucoup d'autres qui suivent, Language Policy Management and Planning. Donc, encore une fois, bienvenue, very welcome. Et donc, je laisse Xavier Villa nous parler de Higher Education Linguistic Model in Catalonia, Origins, Rationals, Achievements and Challenges. Bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup de la présentation. Bon, je dois commencer par dire que vous m'avez créé le problème le plus important en termes linguistiques que j'ai eu pendant beaucoup d'années, parce que j'avais l'idée que j'allais faire ma présentation en anglais, alors je vois que tout le monde change de langue sans arrêt. Mais je ne sais pas le faire, ça. Alors, j'imagine que je vais faire la présentation en anglais, mais si je change de langue, j'essaierai de ne pas changer entre trop de langues, parce que l'anglais, c'est la troisième et le français, c'est la quatrième langue. Alors, il y en a d'autres avant. Bon, well, so I'm going to talk about the higher education linguistic model in Catalonia, and in fact, I'm going to follow this title. I'll talk a little bit about the origins of this linguistic model, its rationals, its achievements, and finally the challenges it's facing right now. But before we move into the origins of this linguistic model, let me just give you a couple of indications about Catalan to simplify or clarify some aspects. Catalan is what we call a medium-sized European language. It's spoken in 4 different states, basically in Spain, in the Mediterranean coast, natively. I'm talking about a language that has been there for at least 700 years, okay? Also in southern France, le département des Pyrénées-Orientales, also in the independent state of Andorra, which is not even a member of the European Union, and in a small city in Sardinia, which is in Italy, okay? But I'll be talking basically about Catalonia, which is the part of the linguistic territory with more people. In fact, there are around 14 million people living in this area. Catalan is the native language of around between 5 and 6 million people, and it's understood by between 13 and 14 million people. It's spoken by between 10 and 11 million people. A little bit more people can read it, then around 8 million people can write it. These figures are important in order to contextualize the situation of the language I'm going to be talking about. I mean, you are used to speaking about French and English, two languages with many million and many monolingual million speakers all around the world. So I'll be talking about a medium-sized language. In fact, it's one of the language, it's among the 100 more spoken languages in the world, because you know that a huge majority of the languages in the world have very few speakers. But I think that this idea of medium-sized languages is useful. In demographic terms, it's quite comparable to Danish, to Norwegian, to Slovakian, to Czech, etc., etc. So it's not a strange language in a European context. A second introductory remark is what do I mean by a linguistic model and how does it apply to higher education? I define a linguistic model as an institution's explicit or implicit systematic arrangement of language practices that includes uses and corpus, language learning and discourses about language. At an educational institution, of course. That means that we will look at the way language learning, language practices, and language discourses take place basically at the universities of Catalonia, and we'll see the evolution in time and its current situation. When we we talk about a higher education institution, we are talking about an institution that has a number of social functions. The first social function is teaching, of course. There's a second social function, which is doing research and producing research. There's also this dissemination of knowledge function, which you can speak about transfer. Transfer is usually applied to more economically oriented activities, but universities, academics are always also expected to disseminate their knowledge in their society. Finally, of course, there's administration, which is important when defining how a university works. Okay, let's try to acquire a little bit of a historical perspective to define the current higher education linguistic model. And to do that, I'll use the model suggested for Danish universities by some Danish colleagues. Danish, in number of speakers, is not quite that different from Catalan. They say that the Danish university, in linguistic terms, during the 15th and 16th century, was based its instruction on the basis of auctoritas. People was expected to learn what had been decided that was right by those who had been right in the distant past. And the language of transmission of knowledge was Latin. In the 17th and 18th century, the reason became the legitimizing principle. At that moment, they claimed that Danish universities started using not only Latin, but other European languages and Danish. Then in the 19th and 20th century, the nation would be the basic element legitimizing universities. For them, Danish was the only language used as the medium of instruction. And finally, they claimed that universities are entering a new period, the period of post-national universities, which, according to them, would be ruled by market and would have two languages, Danish and English. Okay, this is quite a nice model, even if I think, and I'm not the only one to think that it simplifies things quite a lot. Just to give you an example of the simplification, we know that already by the end of the Middle Ages, there were quite a number of individuals that were using vernacular languages to disseminate scientific knowledge, scientific in medieval terms, including from theology to medicine and engineering, veterinary, etc., etc. There's quite a lot of production, meaning that Latin was not the only language used for highly demanding intellectual issues. Just to give you an example, we've got plenty of books in Catalan about medicine in the 14th and 15th century. So things are not that easy as this model shows, but we could keep it in mind. What is clear is that from the Renaissance on, there's been an important trend towards a vernacularization of science and nationalization of university. Just think about Galileo Galilei, who wrote part of his works at the beginning in Latin, but moved to Tuscan, to future Italian. Okay, I mean, he was quite a remarkable name in the history of science. The tension between this, let's call it more local or more international system, can be seen all during the 17th and 18th century, but especially since the early 19th century, with a growing number of universities, with lesser specialization of universities. At a given moment, universities were specialized, for instance, in medicine. So everybody would go to Montpellier to learn medicine. Or theology, everybody would go to a particular university. That changed, and more universities would do more things. And so mobility was less relevant. The Westphalian system which is, in fact, in political terms, it's defined as a cuius regio eius religions, the religion of the king should be the religion of the territory, but that principle was applied also to language. So you could say cuius regio eius linguae. It would not be eius. Okay, there was a trend to democratizing and spreading the knowledge, not keeping it only among the elites, which encouraged the use of vernacular languages and science, which means that, in fact, at a given point during the 19th century, there is the final admission of Latin as the language of the academic lingua franca, and there's a competition not only to have more linguae academicae, but also there's a competition to see what language will become the academic lingua franca. I'm using these two terms on purpose because I think that they help us to understand our current situation. So the number of linguae academicae will keep growing, and there's a competition which in the 19th and 20th century is basically among three languages, German, French, and English, with Russian at a given moment. We'll see if Chinese at any time tries to start making a competition to English, which is right now the academic lingua franca. Okay, just to give you an example of how this lingua academicae grew in Europe, and I'm limiting it to a part of Europe, you've got in blue the linguae academicae which were already used for all purposes of science and technology before the 19th century started. You've got plenty of languages which developed as lingua academicae in the 19th century, and after the First World War, more languages became lingua academicae. Danish had been there at universities. We've seen that since the 16th century, but Finnish, as far as I know, became lingua academica basically after the independence from the Russian Empire. So this is the context, the European context, where more and more languages became languages widely used in universities. We can therefore see a tension, an inbuilt tension in these three basic social functions of university, between what we could call the international or the discipline orientation, which is as an academic, I want to have access to existing scientific knowledge. As an academic or a future academic, I want to a promotion in my international mobility, my academic promotion, my international recognition that would push us towards academic lingua franca, an academic lingua franca, while simultaneously there's this other trend towards the local lingua academica, which is justified in terms of, okay, our students will understand better what we teach, we will transfer knowledge to our society much more easily if we publish in Italian than in Latin or in English. Those are facts. More people understand Italian in Italy than English. So just you could use this opposition right now, but I will sustain that this tension has been there for many centuries, and it is an important element to understand university as we know it in the Western world. There are other institutions of higher education in other civilizations, in the Arabic world, in the Chinese tradition, in the Indian tradition, and interestingly, they have not had the same debates about languages as we have had. And if you want, we can elaborate that at the end, but that is quite interesting. And at stake here, there's a question, an interesting question. Is a complete language, so a language that is used for all purposes, a prerequisite for development? Just think about people who were in the Austro-Hungarian Empire by the end of the 19th century, people at the Russian Empire by the end of the 19th century. They had this question: should we develop our language to make it complete? That means used for all purposes, Or no, we can use an international lingua franca, and that will be enough. Peoples of a European ideological configuration moved basically in this direction, while in post-colonial countries they have gone in the other direction. They have said, no, we won't normalize our language, we'll use English or French or whatever language, and with that we'll have enough. Okay, I think that we have a very, very significant question here. Is a complete language a prerequisite to make a democratic, participatory society or not? Okay, let's go to Catalan, since that I was expected to speak about Catalan. Catalan, university in Catalonia was quite an early phenomenon. There was the University of Lleida in the year 1300, and then, well, you see some of the universities in the Catalan language area, the period when they were created. At the beginning of the 18th century, there was a war in Europe, the war of Spanish succession, which confronted plenty of European countries, Castile and France against the Crown of Aragon, Brittany, the Low Countries and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The result of that was that France and Castile won, and then, to put it simply, Castile annexed all the territories that had been the Crown of Aragon, including all the Catalan territories, which meant the dismantling of all institutions. The constitution was abolished, and the universities were abolished. And some years later, a new university was created, directly controlled by the advisory Council of the King, which was literally called the Council of Castile. Okay, so it was a university controlled by the Council of Castile, and of course, Catalan had no place there. In the 19th century, the university was transferred back to Barcelona. There was a small period of an autonomous university between 1933 and 1939. That was during the Republic. After that, there was during the last 3 years, there was a civil war, which was won by a military, the military group that had risen against the government. There was this dictatorship, and by 1979, Catalonia gained a statute of autonomy, which is basically a private constitution. Spain is not a federal state, as you know it in Canada. It is organized in autonomous communities which do not have the same capacities as provinces in Canada. For instance, in Canada, education is a provincial competence. In Spain, education is partially dependent on the central government, which is supposed to organize the basic elements, and the autonomous governments may do what is not basic. Okay? As you can imagine, the definition of basic is very elastic. And since the one to decide is the central government, the elasticity is considerable in one direction. In linguistic terms, what this meant was that, in the Middle Ages and the Modern Ages, Catalan functioned like other languages as an auxiliary language for science and basically for the distribution of knowledge. At a given point, there was a competition between Latin, Catalan, and Castilian, but after the dismantling of the institutions, Castilian became the only lingua academica. Okay, not a lingua franca, but it was the only academic lingua that was allowed. During the 20th century, there's been an alternation. In some periods, basically, when there's been democracy, Catalan has become an academic, a lingua academica, and while there was no democracy, Catalan was forbidden at universities. But during the whole century, there was this clear idea. Catalan should be a complete language, which means used for all social purposes. Okay. In fact, here you've got a quotation which is, I think it's quite interesting. It says, what we want, since Catalan is suitable, I mean, this is written in the second half of the 19th century when Catalan was not taught at school, okay? It was forbidden to teach Catalan at school. When you make comparisons between Canada and Spain, try to keep in mind that the policy by the central governments regarding linguistic diversity in the country has been considerably different. In Spain, there has been prohibition of languages, okay? Just to give you an example, yeah, but the period is not the same. I remember the first time I saw Catalan written, okay, my generation, and I remember myself saying, oh, it's weird. I had never seen it written. So it's not the same. I mean, it's not only a matter of degree, because you could always have books printed in French, pressed in French, that was forbidden, okay? And there was nowhere to import it from, okay? That's also important. But even if that was the situation, this is a vindication of Catalan. Since it is suitable for our purposes, we wanted to preach sweetly and well. The original is very Baroque, and my translation is. But this is what I'm interested in: to lecture and discuss in the academy. Okay, so it was forbidden even at school, but the popular demand for that was there. So the idea, a complete language, a plurilingual, well, because Catalans always knew that they would need an academic lingua franca to move somewhere else, okay? But with a complete language. The same situation, the same reivindication was there many years later in the 1970s. This is a fragment of an interview with the first democratic Prime Minister of Spain, the first interview that he had with an international mass media. He was Adolfo Suarez, and allegedly the journalist asked him, will it be allowed to have high school in Basque or Catalan? Catalan and Basque were not at school yet, 1979. So, and this was the answer. Your question, forgive me to say it, is silly. First of all, find me some teachers who can teach nuclear chemistry in Catalan or Basque. Let's be serious. This fragment demonstrates two things. First one, he had well, no idea about chemistry or physics, because there's nothing called nuclear chemistry, as far as I know. Second, the idea he had about the languages was extremely supremacist. Some languages are useful for some purposes, and then you've got those wild languages that are intrinsically useless for anything, okay? This created a strong reaction, politicians, cultural organizations, to the extent that the still non-democratic civil government had to beg pardon, publicly saying, no, we respect the language, of course, we didn't want to offend, this was an invention of the journalists, etc., etc., etc. Okay, let's move into the recent period. The process and achievements of this model. Right at that moment when the Prime Minister to be, the President of the government, in fact, was declaring that Catalan was not useful for our purposes, there was a strong reivindication and a strong popular movement to change the situation so that Catalan could be used again as a language in the academy. This is my university, students' assembly. What is interesting is that by 1977, 1978, these are the percentages of usage of Catalan as a language, of the medium of instruction at the 3 universities in Catalonia right now. This is a survey. 51.81% of the courses were done in Catalan, and 10% were done in Catalan and Castilian. This is an estimate by the rector. 50% of the courses at the University of Barcelona, which is more or less 1/3. At that time, it was half of the university system. were in Catalan, while at the Polytechnic University there would be 20% in Catalan and 57% mixing Catalan and Castilian. This is quite interesting because there had been no language policy, no explicit language policy in favor of Catalan that time, which means that professors and students together decided to switch to Catalan. They had not learned the language at school. In fact, many times lecturers would have to write in Castilian because they could not write in any other language, but the medium of instruction was already Catalan. Okay? And the interesting thing is that it happened while not even the statute had been passed. Not even the constitution, the democratic constitution had passed. When we speak about language policy, some approaches speak of language policy as if it is done just by governments. Okay, this is a clear example of how huge changes in language behaviors can happen without any government intervention. Okay, so there was a changing process, and there were plenty of fields to intervene. There had to be changes in norms and legislation, in language teaching, of course, literacy for L1 speakers, Catalan as a second language, languages of specialization, language accreditation, what we call language dynamization, encourage people and modify some practices. For instance, the language of the used for administration had to change, and people had to learn it, and even the corpus had to be modified because after so many years of prohibition, you needed terminology, you had to create it, and language beliefs and discourses were also targeted. There were plenty of people who had believed, yes, our language is not a language of science, we cannot use it. So there had to be a public discussion about, well, what do we want to do with the languages we know? If we speak about institutional development, there was, I will not go into many details, but in 1979, the Statute of Autonomy declared Catalan to be official language, and Catalan was Catalonia proper language in the same sense as proper name, our language, our own language. To understand this term, the central element is to know that the Catalan parties wanted to say that Catalan was Catalonia's national language, but the adjective national was vetoed in Madrid. So they had to find a way to say this, saying with a different language, with a different term. And they found this solution, and okay, well, that created a sort of a consensus at that time. In 1983, there was the law of linguistic normalization providing support to learning and use at all levels. And 1991, there was another law of language policy, which recognized the fact that Catalan had already become the main language of instruction at primary and secondary education. In the year 2003, the law of universities was passed, which created what is called the Catalonia's higher education system. All universities in Catalonia form part, more or less, of the public universities of the same system. They compete with each other, but they are supposed to collaborate for a number of issues. And permanent lecturers, according to this law, must know both official languages. That is important. Permanent lecturers. In the year 2006, the second Statute of Autonomy was passed in a referendum, and 4 years later, the Constitutional Court, there's a note here, decided that the statute that had been voted in a referendum was wrong. Well, this is a bit of a problem. I mean, what's the legitimacy of a court which has been elected by the Parliament of Madrid, where Castilian parliamentarians are in a vast majority, to say that the law that had been passed by the Parliament of Madrid 4 years before and approved by the people of Catalonia in referendum was wrong? I mean, a statute, a constitution is a political issue. It's not a legal issue. It's, first of all, a political issue. You've probably heard about many problems between Catalonia and Spain. Most authors would say that that was a mistake. Right now, it's said not only by Catalan authors. I mean, that sentence was probably the seed of the conflict. Because, in fact, what has produced is that right now, a large part of the Catalan population feel that has been expelled from the constitutional framework. If what we voted is not constitutional, we are outside of the Spanish constitution, by definition. All of this institutional, legal development had another development at more local level, institutional, at its university level. A conscious language policy was developed during these 30 years, and I'll give you an example of the architecture of these language policy model. Each university has a statute which includes language clauses and passes pluriannual language policy plans. The rector and the vice rector, which is in charge of language policy, which can be any sort of vice rector. There's a language policy commission, which is formed by all the deans and some specialists. There's a network of faculty language dynamization commissions that take place of the particular needs in language policy at every faculty. And there's a number of language services and language institutes, which are technical bodies, which take care of language teaching, language dynamization, language consultancy, and terminology, and also support the elaboration of language policies. Okay, this is what happens within my university, for instance. And apart from that, all universities are organized in the network of Joan Lluís Vives network, which coordinates all universities in all the Catalan-speaking area. That means including Valencia and Balearic Islands, even southern France. There's also the Catalonia's Inter-University Commission of Language Teaching and Accreditation. All universities work together to develop a single way to evaluate, to accredit the level of Catalan or Spanish or English or whatever you want. So it's an effort that is done collectively. And finally, there's the Catalonia's Inter-University Council, where important measures in language policy are taken collectively. That's a result of creating the Catalonia's university system. Okay. What are the basic principles of Catalonia's higher education linguistic model? So far, we've seen how it has developed, but how does it work? There are a number of principles. The first principle is what has been called the officiality principle, which says that Catalan and Castilian are official languages, and they can be used by any member of the university community, and all university members are supposed to understand both of them. Okay? Which means that wherever I am as a student, I can use one of these two languages. Okay? Irrespective of what you do, my interlocutor. I must understand you, and you must understand me. This is synthesized as the freedom of emission and the duty of understanding principle. You can imagine that makes it difficult to create language streams, because you can never tell anyone, no, this is the Catalan language stream, so you should use Catalan, or a Castilian language stream, so you should use Castilian, okay? I told you that you are alone quite a lot, de solitude. We are never alone, we are always. The country is much more, it is smaller. So that's, well, maybe, but sometimes it's funny. All professors are expected, or lecturers are expected to be competent bilinguals, at least receptively. In fact, they should be productively bilingual, according to the law. Then there's the language conjunction principle. Students should not be separated into centers or class groups on the basis of their habitual language of use. This makes things even more complicated. This is a basic element in language policy in Catalonia. To understand this, you have to keep in mind that there's no way to divide the society in territorial or whatever you want. And in fact, no one wants to create internal divisions, neither those who are in favor of independence or those who are in favor of greater union with Spain, okay? Some people promote the idea of creating different communities, and they've got a website in the internet, and they are, for the general public, they are a group of freaks. That's it. And if a politician makes the mistake of saying something in that direction, everybody will try to crucify him. Of course, this creates a nice combination of different levels of proficiency at any single class that you can imagine. And, but things go even farther because lecturers are not necessarily speaking their first language. So the idea that you should speak your dominant language is quite a weird idea. There's also the proper own language principle. Catalan is the language of preferential use in universities as administrative bodies and for educational activities. So in principle, Catalan should be first, okay? And it is first at the administration, clearly. More, the linguistic normalization principle, universities must take appropriate measures to ensure the use of Catalan in all spheres. We like to make things complicated because this is applied to all universities, okay? And finally, to make things exciting, there's the internationalization principle. Universities can establish specific criteria for language use in activities related to international commitments. Okay, there are two crucial issues to understand a little bit this system. First one, I don't know if you've read this book. It is an extraordinary success. It is the book, the best sold essay book in the history of, I don't know, the last 100 years. That means the history of humankind. It's a history of human beings. I bring it here because I want you to have a look at what standard Catalan and standard Spanish look like, because both are Romance languages. They are related, strongly related. As francophones, you can, this is Catalan, you can, une bière histoire du jardin, si l'histoire ne suit pas des règles stables, et on ne peut pas en prédire le cours futur, pourquoi l'étudier? Souvent, il semble que le but principal de la science soit prédire le futur. Okay, it's not that far away from French. Here you've got, I mean, I was reading that in French, not in Catalan. Si la història no segueix unes regles estables i no podem predir-ne el curs futur, per què estudiar-la? And this is Spanish, which is logically quite similar to the Catalan version. Okay, I mean, I could put the Italian version and it's not that far away either, and the Portuguese version is not that far away. There's a continuum of languages, okay? Then I've been talking to people, some people here, some people said, no, I understand French better than Catalan. I said, no, I read Catalan from my French. Well, that's a linguistic continuum. That's important. I mean, that makes intercomprehension much easier than in Finland between Swedish and Finnish, of course. Then you've got the Spanish Constitution. The Spanish Constitution was passed, it was an alternative. Either you pass this constitution or you remain in a military fascist dictatorship. Okay, so my parents and grandparents voted happily for the constitution. But it had some tricks. For instance, all Spaniards have the duty to know, that means the duty to master as if they were native speakers, Castilian. Okay, so it is a constitutional duty, to the extent that some people have been denied Spanish nationality because they could speak Catalan, immigrants who had learned Catalan but not Spanish, and they had refused the Spanish nationality because they were not integrated. And that was the decision of the Constitutional Court. Since they have not integrated, they only speak Catalan, and that goes against this. They are not recognize the nationality. So this is, of course, very important to understand the model. If you want some sort of equality between the two languages. The only way is to make Catalan, to put Catalan at the same level of Spanish. Well, the Constitutional Court, when ruling that the 2006 statute was non-constitutional, decided that a clause that said that both Catalan and Castilian were had to be known by the citizens of Catalonia was unconstitutional. Only Castilian had to be of compulsory knowledge in Catalonia. Catalan had to be optional. When I said that, that decision produced a number of problems. These are some of them. Okay, so the current situation. I'll move rapidly into the most important issues. Let's have a look at the medium of the languages as a medium of instruction. I'll say some things about materials, doctoral thesis, and I'll try to describe some elements of the model. In terms of language use, at degree level, Catalan is the predominant language used, at least by the lecturers. Okay, this is Catalan, this is Castilian. Okay, and these are third languages, which basically means English, except in faculties of languages where you've got Polish and Russian and whatever you want. So it's around 75%. The weighted mean was that of use of Catalan is 76%, 14% Castilian, and 9% English, basically. In master courses, things are quite different. You've got less Catalan, especially in some universities. This is the newest university, in fact, where English is the predominant language and Spanish is the second language. I won't go into that, but there's quite a number of published materials, but of course, in Catalan, we don't have many journals which are at the top of the ranking. So that means that the more you move into specialization, the less Catalan you have. In some areas, there's plenty of Spanish. In some areas, it is just English. So reading materials are quite often basically in Spanish and or English, and with not that much of Catalan. But here you've got, well, open access journals and academic publications. And what happens with the doctoral thesis, the doctoral dissertations? Okay, this is the evolution in the language from that was, sorry, yeah, between 1989 to 1990 up to 2006 and 7. You see that Castilian was going down and English was starting to move up in percentages. Right now, these are the percentages. Catalan has fallen to 13%, Castilian is now in 33%. And sorry, this is just at the University of Barcelona, but more or less the figures are similar for all universities. And English is already the first language of dissertations. Okay, there's one issue there, which is not that easy to see. In this period, many more foreign students have come, and they do not necessarily learn Catalan and Spanish. They may come from Brazil or Denmark, and they write in English. But apart from that, it is true that even native Catalan students write more and more, especially in the areas of biology and hard sciences, in English. So the result is a complex plurilingual model. I've tried to apply my colleague's model to our university system, and well, you can find whatever you want. I mean, we have a wide offer of all, which in fact is even much more complicated than what you exposed yesterday, I would say. You've got monolingual and endolingual courses in Catalan, giving for sure that everybody understands Catalan as a native speaker, or in Castilian, or in English, okay? Then you've got monolingual and exolingual classes, and you've got bilingual and plurilingual modes. And what I was thinking, when I said it is even more complicated, is that this is probably what the institution wants the course to be. But why do we think that my definition of the course is assumed by my students. I give a course at the English language department. I do not belong to that department. That's why they forgive me for my accent. But I think that I am designing a 3A, 3B, sorry, a 3A model, but I have some, for instance, Irish or English or American students who are easily established in this model, to the extent we had this Irish guy. No one could understand him. Not even me. I mean, I had to read what he was saying, and I told him, listen, we all have difficulties. My Russian students came to me saying, listen, when that guy speaks, we just switch off. We don't know what he's saying. But he was speaking English in his Irish native accent, and he was quite a brilliant student. He was the more monolingual and endolingual guy I ever had in my course. But that's not that surprising. I mean, this year I've got 2 English students who think that everybody will understand even the slightest joke, local joke, which we don't understand. None of the other. So I think that you should provide us with even a more complex model. Okay, so challenges for the future. Here we have the Catalan Sky Education Linguistic Model. What are the challenges it is facing right now? Well, we've got the usual stuff with the Spanish authorities. They forget, for instance, they go to the European Union and they discuss about language policy at universities, and they manage that the European Union pays for language courses to facilitate that students going from one country to another one can learn the language of the university so that they can have a real experience of the local university. But they forget Catalan, Basque, and Galician, which means that you've got a guy, a nice guy coming from Sweden, coming to Barcelona, and suddenly he realizes that he's given money to learn Castilian, which is great, but all his courses are in Catalan. You see the problem. And the Spanish government says, oh, shit. We knew that there was something, but we forgot. They never say this. They say, sorry, European money is only for official languages. And since we didn't ask that Catalan was an official language at Brussels, we cannot include your language in that program, okay? Well, this problem was solved, but you have to ask for it once and again and cry and mobilize. It's tiresome. Then there's the internationalization and commodification process of higher education, which is pushing and increasing the pressure into this model, which was designed for Catalan students who were widely bilingual in Catalan and Castilian. But then you've got that Swedish girl, or you've got those master's students coming from Taiwan and whatever you want, and the model is not prepared for that. You've got the desire of at least a percentage of families and students, they want to improve their English. So they ask for more English wherever it could be. I mean, could we have the underground in English so that we can learn English? And finally, we've got our own government, which is able to make mistakes in language policy, and which has been also reduced to very very serious budgetary problems. Okay, let me show you some of these challenges. There's the impact of third language requirements, which is connected with internationalization. 4 years ago, the Catalan Minister of Economy said, our university students should all know a third language, by which he meant English. He came from Harvard. And what's the solution? We'll make it compulsory. What? Learning English? No. Proving that you have the level. So they created a program of scholarships for students who wanted to take exams or courses apart from their regular courses in biology or medicine or whatever they want to improve the knowledge of third languages. Okay, this has created an important problem because next year the students should prove that they have this level, and at least 1/3 of university students in their third year do not have a B2 plus level in a third language. Okay, so this is a problem. In fact, now they talk about reinterpreting the law because, and to make it not exactly compulsory. In fact, there are a number of issues which are quite difficult to understand. For instance, the number of students, of university students who take foreign language courses has not grown dramatically, even if they have been, well, they are expected to be all competent in a third language. And we don't know exactly why. Okay, trends in language uses. That's another challenge. And in response of globalization, internationalization, and the pressure, well, different pressures. Again, this is Catalan, this is Castilian, and this is other languages. This is a particular university. You see that the trend is going down, okay? This is a given university which has made a strong gamble to become the most international university, but this is creating a great number of problems. They said, well, I mean, I know the people who did that, and they had good will, and they said, look, we were successful at making a bilingual university, so we can apply the same measures, and we can say that the 3 languages, including English, should be in the same position. So everybody is expected to know the 3 languages, so the freedom of emission, etc., etc., etc. Okay, things do not go so easily when you modify the basic elements, because not everybody knows English, and of course not all English-speaking guys who come for 1 year want to learn English or even Spanish. Why should they? So the system does not work for that, and the result is that Catalan is losing there because internationalization is not being properly organized. This is dramatic in masters, okay? Do you remember the scene when, that takes place in my faculty, exactly, I teach there. That moment when there's one student, female student, who raises her hands and, excuse me, could you give the lesson in Castilian? And there's a small debate. That used to happen. It does not happen that much, but that used to happen. Why? Well, mobile students, mobile professors may be disinclined to learn Catalan and Castilian, but also, especially Erasmus students, may not feel like attending a course in Catalan, which is supposed to be in Catalan, but they want to have it in a different language because they went to Spain and they want to, well, tapas, bullfight, Spanish. I mean, why not Mexican hats? You can buy Mexican hats in Barcelona. They're quite popular. Okay, and it was difficult for people to resist this sort of pressure. My poor colleague who has come here, she didn't know anything. She's just here for 3 months. So that meant that Catalan disappeared from many courses because we don't want, especially at the beginning, we don't want to damage her stay here, and we are nice people in the end. So, okay, the result was that those guys who wanted to have their course in Catalan lost their right to have their course in Catalan. And okay, some actions have been taken, plenty of courses, and the principle of linguistic transparency or linguistic security that says that once you make public the language of the course, you cannot change it. Even if 1 million Swedish students come crying, please, we want to hear, you can't. Especially at that university, the situation has become complex. This is a tweet which appeared some weeks ago, 1 month ago, saying that, you know, it's funny, I studied at a university named after Pompeu Fabra, who was the guy who codified modern Catalan, and I don't have any class in Catalan. Why? Because since we want to be international, and the 3 languages will be on equal status, but unfortunately, some of our students don't understand Catalan, we will use a different language. Okay? You see the, I mean, again, this is a challenge for the system. You have to redefine the rules. And even more important, there, especially at that university, I don't want to sound nasty with that university, they're friends of mine, they're colleagues. But some dynamics have ingrained mechanisms of Anglification. For instance, if you say that Catalan, English, and Spanish is supposed to be known by everybody, but you don't make measures to control that, the result is that obviously you will have plenty of people who don't know one of the languages. But if you go one step beyond and you hire lots of people who do not share that view of that worldview, you'll end up like this. This is the answer to the selection process at a university department. You see the trilingual version of the message, don't you? You see the version in Catalan, the version in Spanish, and the version in English, don't you? Okay, that's the whole message. So, to hire a part-time temporary lecturer at that small department, they forgot. They wanted to be so international that they forgot. Probably they already, probably not, I know that they have already an important amount of international lecturers who, in fact, don't care about the university language policy, but that reproduces because they are hiring more people on the basis of, oh, we want to be international and we don't care about the local languages. Okay, by the way, they made mistakes. Let me finish with this. We are starting to think critically about the process of internationalization. Why is it so important to increase more and more and more the number of international students, and who's getting benefit from that? This comes from a newspaper, triumphalistic. Oh, the Catalan universities receive as many students in percentage as Danish and as Holland. Okay, but it is quite interesting. In international terms, internationalization of universities is often seen as a way to get money to make universities be able, well, to meet ends. But public universities cannot charge international students with the real cost of the master or of the degree. In fact, our students pay around 20%. All European students pay, when they come to Catalonia, between 20 and 30% of the real cost. And people from other countries, from outside the European Union, will not even pay the real cost of the course. So this creates an interesting contradiction because you are not making money with that, which is one of the basics of the internationalization process, at least in theory. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it is important, especially when you've got a huge deficit. Okay, so what are we talking about, in fact? Because since we want to speak about marketing university and go international because this is we will be market-oriented, it is funny that we do that from a public service, at least in my view. So, I'll finish. The Catalan high school linguistic model is highly bilingual, as you've seen. It's the reflection of a society, or if you take the different areas, different societies, which is highly bilingualized and often heteroglossic, which values enormously its own language and wants it to be a complete language, and which allows for considerable heterogeneity in practice, which is trying to adapt to a context of growing internationalization and has a number of challenges to solve and some questions to answer. But, well, it has so far allowed to re-establish Catalan as a vibrant academic language, which is, in fact, it is one of the successes in promoting a medium-sized language during the last century. So, well, that was something I wanted to tell you, and if you want more information about this, one of the books that I published specifically about higher education will appear in a second. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for detailing a complex and interesting situation. Have we got any questions, any comments for discussion?
Et vous pouvez le faire en français. Moi j'ai oublié de switcher.
The comment for me is how very shockingly recent this phenomenon has been.
Oh, yeah.
We're not talking centuries ago. It's
No.
extremely recent.
Yeah. Catalan became a compulsory subject at schools as a subject in 1978 or 79, something like that. So yes, it's recent.
So I want to get back to l'auberge espagnole. You answered so many of my questions that I was preparing to ask you by that point, but I still don't quite understand. So how you said that it doesn't occur anymore?
No, I didn't say it doesn't occur anymore, but it's reduced because Erasmus students would come and say, I love Erasmus, they are very nice, but they've got their own goals in life. For instance, some of them want to go to the beach. That's right. Others want to learn Spanish, and they would like to find a university which is done according to their needs. Okay, so what happened at that time, 10 years ago, was that they claimed nobody told us that Catalan was used. We didn't know, and now we are here. And then individually, the lecturer and the students would say, okay, we've got a problem. I will help you. Some people would say, it's your problem. Other people would say, okay, if nobody objects, I will change to Castilian. Other people would say, during the first month, I will speak in Castilian, and after 1 month, I will continue in Catalan, which is quite a surprising way of integrating someone to learning one language by not using it, and then saying, now that you've been here for 1 month, now you should understand it. Well, okay. The issue is that to solve that, the principle of transparency or linguistic security was introduced. The lecturers are free to say the language they want to use. So, but you have to communicate it before, 1 year before, some months before. And it appears on the internet. So my wonderful Estonian guy cannot say anymore, I didn't know, because you say, come on, didn't you look at the internet when you said, I want to follow this particular course? Didn't you read Catalan there? So the legitimacy is not there anymore. I don't say that any professor is not changing. Some lecturers change, okay? But as far as we know, this language shift has diminished considerably.
And so part of my question was, you mentioned at some point that streaming was not allowed or not possible, but how does that fit into the idea that actually you do announce whether the course is in Castilian or...
Because you don't have the whole of your career in one language. You don't have medicine in Catalan, okay? Or you don't have. Some universities do some faculties at some universities do things quite close to this, okay? And there are some faculties where Catalan is 95% the language of instruction. So you don't have 2 different streams, you just have one, okay? So, but what you cannot do is, authorities cannot say, you are a Catalan speaker, you are a Castilian speaker, so you are supposed to go to different streams. This is what is forbidden, okay?
So the student would have to pre-plan their whole degree, looking at the languages of the courses, in case at some point they may have to take a course in Catalan.
Oh, yeah.
Speak it.
Yeah. Because everybody's supposed to understand both languages. Since you can understand both of them, this should not be a problem for you, unless you come from... Sure.
Question courte. So, non, c'est court, merci. Everybody from Barcelona speaks Catalan and Castilian.
Everybody born and who's younger than 50 years has passed through a system which in fact at least theoretically, have made him competent to speak and write in Catalan and in Castilian. Those who fail in primary education, a part of them, may not acquire the competence in their second language. I mean, you've got a percentage of people who have who are obviously less competent in their second language, but in terms of comprehension, you can say that 100% of the population understands it.
Both sont sur le même piédestal à l'école primaire et secondaire.
No, the main language of education at school is Catalan.
Catalan.
Yeah.
Donc Spanish is the second.
Well,
Ok, d'accord.
and the exams for Spanish are similar as the exams which are taken in monolingual Castilian-speaking regions, and the levels of success are similar.
Est-ce qu'il vous apparaît que l'offre de cours en anglais, en plus d'être associée avec l'internationalisation, est une manière de neutraliser le discours?
Non.
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 De se dire, bon, mais non.
Absolument. Je ne connais pas aucun cas où l'on avait une crise existentielle et il a dit oh, je ne peux pas le faire en catalan, je ne peux pas le faire en castillan, je vais le faire en anglais. Ce qui se passait, j'imagine, nous, on prépare un master et on dit, moi je le vis, nous allons porter des gens de toute l'Europe, alors il faut le faire en anglais, alors ça ne peut pas marcher, par exemple, parce que l'Europe est grande, il y a beaucoup d'étudiants, mais il y a aussi beaucoup de la concurrence. Mais c'est une question décidée par les professeurs. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Je vais maintenant céder la parole à Jérémy Serror qui, à partir du 1er juillet, sera le directeur, non plus intérimaire, mais complètement légitime, de l'Ilob.
Oui, merci. Merci. Alors, chers tous, c'est un grand honneur pour moi de pouvoir clore ce symposium et en essayant le mieux possible de synthétiser toute la richesse des idées et des discussions qui ont eu lieu lors de ces 2 derniers jours. C'est un défi de taille, mais en même temps, je me dis, je sais qu'il y a un cocktail qui suit ceci, alors je vous rassure tout de suite, je ne vais pas être trop long, and we'll keep the real celebration for the end of this. Mais je tiens quand même à en profiter de cette dernière allocution de la journée pour souligner la qualité des interventions que nous avons eu le plaisir de recevoir aujourd'hui, hier. Je félicite et je remercie tous les participants de ce congrès qui, dans plusieurs des cas, ont voyagé de très longues distances ou, dans certains cas, ont pris le temps et ont relevé le défi de travailler avec la technologie pour nous enregistrer leur présentation en mode asynchrone, même si ils faisaient semblant qu'ils étaient là. Donc, merci à M. Graham Fraser, à Mme Choppy Paquet d'avoir relevé ce défi-là. La richesse, c'est les conversations qui ont eu lieu, ainsi que la diversité des représentations que nous avons pu avoir pour le thème, a vraiment, et je pense, contribué de façon importante à la question qu'on se posait, l'immersion aujourd'hui, où est-ce que nous en sommes. Indeed, to celebrate the 10th year anniversary of the immersion of the University of Ottawa, the goal was to bring forward the many voices of immersion, both in Canada and around the world. I could not be happier with the diversity of the voices which we heard, as I mentioned. Experts, political representatives, administrators, directors of programs, students, professors, instructors were all represented, each presentation adding new depth and insight about what we might say when we ask ourselves, where are we with regards to immersion at the university. L'immersion, bien sûr, on peut s'en féliciter au Canada. C'est cette idée qui a peut-être pas uniquement canadienne, mais a quand même bien germé ici, a grandi, mais qui sait, on le voit exporté un peu partout dans les écoles et les universités dans le monde. Donc, joyeux anniversaire. Mais je vais revenir pour cette espèce de synthèse à l'image de Nina Pilke que j'avais bien aimé de l'éléphant. I think it is a worthy one of this great, beautiful beast, which can be very powerful but easily misunderstood unless you bring together various perspectives and with regards to the various elements that make it up. And at the same time, try to bring up what I want to do is bring up some of the common traits that have come up during the conference. So, first, it is clear that with all of its incarnations, whether we're talking about immersion, CLIL, content-based language teaching, ILCI, various forms of integrated language and content learning in higher education all share a common goal, to find a way to break down traditional barriers, very old barriers between language and content, between language teachers and content teachers, between majority and minority languages, as well as bring forward in much more explicit and reflective way the role that language plays as something that is at the heart of all content and knowledge, and conversely, how knowledge and content is at the heart of all language. It is thus a force to be reckoned with. And I like the image, again, of the elephant. The elephant in the room is that expression we often use, that thing that is there that sometimes we've ignored or that we continue to ignore, or which is becoming harder and harder to ignore. So whether we're talking about the politics of history, démographie, l'internationalisation, la mobilité étudiante, la renaissance d'une langue qui n'a jamais vraiment disparu, mais qui se réaffirme. On voit des éléments qui forcent une façon de repenser comment on peut enseigner les langues, comment on va penser l'enseignement des langues. So immersion becomes this very powerful way to respond to real challenges and societal needs. Au niveau universitaire, l'enjeu est particulièrement intéressant car c'est au post-secondaire que ces apprenants auront la chance de se découvrir, de s'affirmer un petit peu, de se rendre spécifiques dans des disciplines qui vont avoir des conséquences pour leur profession, pour les carrières qui vont suivre, pour les pays qu'ils vont visiter, pour ceux qui vont se voir comme étant possibles pour leur futur. Et donc là, je suis, comme je vais faire un commentaire, mais je suis d'accord que l'immersion au secondaire est importante, mais je pense qu'elle est particulièrement importante aussi à l'université. On a eu des beaux exemples de ça avec les étudiants qui ont parlé de l'impact que cela peut avoir. Et le niveau, bien sûr, on en a parlé aussi, le niveau universitaire du langage qui est abordé avec une immersion universitaire est différent et permet une puissance qui est autre que ce qu'on va peut-être pouvoir faire au secondaire. So it's about this, again, this ability to favor diversity, contribute to the promotion and development of a plurilingual world, of protecting, bringing back minority languages, making these valued, transforming the identity of students, transforming a world where we have a better understanding of the links, sometimes the very nuanced links between language, again, and knowledge, and how these shape how we see things. And again, what we see also is ability to deepen and strengthen what is sometimes often planted in secondary and elementary school, but which may, we've talked about this, disappear unless it has a chance to continue on beyond secondary and really grow and really affirm itself at that level. Now, as I was trying to think last night about, okay, how am I going to synthesize all this? Je ne sais pas combien d'entre vous ont eu le plaisir de grandir avec Sesame Street. Je suis moi-même un enfant du bilinguisme, étant donné que j'ai grandi dans une région purement anglophone. Mais on parlait le français à la maison, j'ai été dans une école anglophone, j'ai même pris des cours d'immersion. But Sesame Street was one of those things I was asked to watch as a little French kid to learn English. But there was this character, which is Snuffleupagus. How many people know who this person is? Yes. Mr. Snuffleupagus appeared on Sesame Street as this very unique character because he was essentially, for many years, kind of Big Bird's imaginary friend due to essentially he existed and he would appear, but due to a series of coincidences and the way the show was put together, Big Bird was never able to convince people that Snuffleupagus actually existed. He would appear, and then just when the adults would pop in, he would disappear, or the adults would turn this way just when the character would be behind him. And I feel, staying with the theme of the elephant, that in a sense, what we see with the 10 years of immersion, what we've been talking about is there we have, in this room anyways, a very strong sense that this immersion, content-based language learning does exist. It is powerful, as I was mentioning. But sometimes we have a feeling that it's a little bit like Big Bird. We have some frustration at convincing people, but this is not just an imaginary thing. This is something that actually does make a difference for our students and can actually matter and needs to be invested in. So the question then becomes, how do we continue to help in the next 10 years, 15 years, make immersion something that can continue to grow and become more central to the role that it can play in education systems. Because of course it was often a source of comedy for Big Bird, but it was also a source of frustration. And I think that's a feeling we all have sometimes when we think about what we've been talking about today. Il est clair, on l'a vu dans les présentations, non seulement c'est pas imaginaire, mais peut-être qu'en partie les gens pensent que c'est imaginaire parce que c'est difficile de s'imaginer que ça peut marcher. Parce que ce n'est pas simple, parce que c'est compliqué, parce que ça requiert toutes sortes de modalités, de soutien, de travail, d'efforts, et un équilibre qui est constant. C'est la bataille constante dont parlait Graham Fraser. On ne peut pas dire « ok, on va faire comme ça », puis on arrête d'y penser. Non, il faut toujours être à l'affût et ajuster les choses, avoir une approche holistique, changer les choses, reconnaître ce qui a eu lieu par le passé, mais aussi penser à ce qui va avoir lieu dans le futur. Les questions sont pas mal universelles. Comment est-ce qu'on arrive à construire une bonne relation entre le prof de contenu et le prof de langue? Comment est-ce qu'on équilibre? Est-ce que ça va être 50-50, 70-25? Quel va être le rôle des langues différentes? Est-ce qu'on les exclut dans la classe de français ou est-ce qu'on permet une alternance, un plurilinguisme? Ce qui est intéressant, c'est que même si les questions étaient pareilles, bien sûr, ce qu'on a vu, c'est que souvent la réponse va être toujours locale, contextualisée. Ça va être des solutions un peu sur mesure qui représentent bien sûr aussi cette complexité. Mais ce qu'on peut voir, bien sûr, c'est que les solutions sont en partie là. We can certainly build on what we know. We've seen this. So again, the importance of the relationship between instructors involved and the need to create that environment that will foster engagement, which was one of the topics that came up during the plenaries, required to allow students to do the complicated work of breaking down very old and strong barriers, but not only the students, but even the professors. The work in terms of documenting what immersion actually looks like in the classroom, I think that was also one of the strengths of what happened in the last 2 days with these efforts to clarify the definitions, but also what actually this looks like in practice. And again, because it is local and it is contextualized, this is crucial, I feel. So the large-scale studies, small-scale studies, focusing on the actual discursive work that is going on in the classroom so we can see how language is actually being melded and played with as we look at content and how that can actually enhance things. The video records and the interview records and the questionnaires, which focus on what the teachers and the students feel, and the joys, the pains, the high moments, the stigmas, the successes, strategies that matter. I'm biased because I do a lot of case study research, but I do believe that this approach is crucial to helping our friend be something more than just an imaginary friend and convincing people outside of this room. The testimonies that we had today are beautiful testimonies and have power to convince and reassure sometimes or change minds as we look at what we're able to do when we do immersion in universities. Aspects that we have identified over the last 2 days that are important to consider also, so the politics, the socio-historical realities, the professional development, so discipline-specific workshops as a way to attract discipline professors who may not want to do professional development otherwise, les recueils, les guides, the value of incentives, les bourses pour l'immersion pour les étudiants, the development of assessment tools and practices. Which paper do we actually grade? The first one, no, we're going to give them feedback and then we'll work on that. The fine-tuning of the balances, the cross-linguistic comparisons, the support services, keys, Ilob, the use of electronic and digital environments as ways to do this. A whole bunch of these issues were mentioned as basically some of these levers that can be used to help answer some of these questions that we have with regards to how we put this together. Important also the sources of the funding, the location of these programs. Perhaps most importantly, le discours aussi, et repenser un discours qui, encore une fois, est très ancien, mais qui, par exemple, va être lié à la conceptualisation qu'on a de qu'est-ce que ça veut dire apprendre une langue. Donc, apprendre une langue, c'est aussi apprendre un contenu, c'est aussi apprendre une façon de penser, c'est une façon d'être socialisé dans une discipline. Repenser qui est l'apprenant, donc résister à ces fameux discours qui vont souvent les représenter de façon déficitaire. Représentation de qui est l'enseignant de langue, qui est l'enseignant de discipline, et ainsi de suite. Donc, encore une fois, tout cela vient avec l'importance de documenter ce qui a lieu dans ces programmes, en mettant ensemble nos défis, nos questions, en travaillant la terminologie. On peut commencer, je pense, à avoir, et on le voit avec ce symposium, une réelle carte de qu'est-ce qui a eu lieu, qu'est-ce qui se passe et les différents bouts que l'on a. Ces détails-là sont cruciaux parce que it's what allows us to get these, I think, moving from the idea sometimes, and this came up actually in one of the plenaries, like sometimes we know what it means on paper, we even have a definition for it, but when people close their eyes, there may not be much appearing in terms of what it actually means. And I think that's what makes it sometimes ghost-like, to go back to Pilke's plenary and how she was saying these things sometimes exist as ghosts in universities, with presences that are sometimes very mysterious and sometimes even misunderstood within the universities themselves that are hosting these programs. So, the good news, if you're interested, Snuffleupagus in 2015, I think it was made a real character because he was revealed as not just an imaginary character. And the reason they did that is they really wanted kids to understand that it's safe to tell adults sometimes difficult truths and that they should be believed when they say things. And there was a worry that by having a situation where they were always, Big Bird was always saying, this does exist, and nobody was taking him seriously, we were sending a bad message. I think we could do the same, to take the same lesson for us. Again, this came up in the symposium, but the need to keep talking to each other, le vrai partage des pratiques, travailler ensemble pour essayer de mettre de façon beaucoup plus détaillée l'image de l'immersion, non seulement entre nous, mais à l'extérieur des cercles universitaires, pour le grand public, des parents, des étudiants, des éducateurs, des administrateurs, pour qu'il n'ait plus peur ou qu'il n'ait pas d'hésitation pour ce qui est de demander, de promouvoir et de défendre cette approche quand il arrive qu'il soit mis à risque. Donc, très important aussi peut-être de tout simplement remettre la valeur de qu'est-ce que ça représente ce programme. We saw this with the panel with the students, but immersion students are more likely to close the achievement gap by the end of high school. They're more likely to care and fight for the value of official languages and also fight for the rights of francophones. More likely to identify as bilingual and explore paths and experiences and weddings where bilingualism is a reality. Problem solvers have better and deeper understanding of the nuances of the power of language and the strategies required to think with language and often in ways that go beyond the box. Cognitive advantages, more likely to get jobs, more likely to understand and navigate the spaces between cultures, discipline, languages and borders. And I couldn't help but think of Kevin O'Leary and, more likely to become prime ministers. because this is important. And I cannot wait. I'm hoping one day there'll be the 20-year or maybe the 10-year anniversary where we'll have one of these students who have gone through these programs who will benefit from them in the way that they, that it's designed to, because they will be able to represent Canada fully and will be, very well equipped, more so than some candidates, to run for these leadership positions. So I want to thank everyone for their attention, their patience with me today. Je tiens à remercier les gens qui ont permis ce symposium, y compris le Conseil de recherche en sciences humaines pour avoir subventionné cet événement. Merci aussi à la Faculté des Arts, l'Université d'Ottawa, le régime d'immersion en français, l'Institut des langues officielles et du bilinguisme, le CERBAL, le GRINU, c'est le groupe de recherche en immersion au niveau universitaire, présidé par Alice Weinberg, pour tous leurs généreux appuis qui ont rendu l'événement possible. Je suis reconnaissant aussi à la députée Mona Fortier qui nous a rendu visite hier. Je remercie de tout cœur le comité, tous ceux qui ont été inclus dans l'organisation de cet événement. Beaucoup de travail. Mais surtout, encore une fois, je tiens à remercier les conférenciers invités, les panélistes, les auteurs de communication individuelle et les participants qui ont bien voulu venir partager leurs expériences. Sans vous, le symposium n'aurait pas pu être. Et donc, merci. Et un merci aussi tout spécial pour les étudiants qui sont au centre de ces recherches, de ces efforts et le futur de où on va aller. Donc, j'espère que le symposium aura été pour vous une belle occasion d'apprendre de nouvelles perspectives, to develop new collaborations. I hope we can say to each other, see you in 5 years, and that we can continue to work together on all of this. If you are interested in publicizing and communicating your work, I know that we now have officially on the working paper, Olib working papers, the link is active for the call for papers for the publication that will try to bring together some of the presentations that were done today. And before we go to that cocktail, there's one final thing we want to do with some special thanks and some gifts that we would like to offer. So I'm going to call on the organizers to do this. So these things are never possible without volunteers who do this out of the generosity of their heart and the promise of a wonderful experience. Many hours of sleeplessness later, they may be wondering, and I hope they're thinking it was worth it, but we want to thank these volunteers. Who are? Thierry Simonet, who was our professional photographer, you may have seen throughout the last 2 days. Merci beaucoup, Thierry. Laura, qui aussi nous a aidés pendant toute l'organisation et qui a été souvent à la table à l'extérieur en train de nous entendre.
Qu'est-ce qui prend des photos alors si le photographe est là?
Et Matthew Mucha, qui est... Et Liliane.
Oh tiens, José est là pour prendre les photos. C'est pour eux. Oui, c'est pour eux. Ah, tiens, j'arrive. Merci Thierry. Oh, allez, on m'embrasse tout le monde. Depuis le temps. Voilà. Tu as eu ton cadeau, oui. Merci beaucoup. Bah, attends, après.
On peut se permettre.
Voilà, c'est ça. Ok. Tu nous prends les photos.
Si tu veux maintenant.
Bon, puis là, on va demander aux invités de venir nous rejoindre. Laurent, Sonia, will you come here too? Xavier and Nina, will you come here as well? We have something so you'll remember us when you'll be back home.
En ordre dispersé.
Sorry. Nina.
Nina Législaire.
All right. Alors, j'ai Laurent. Merci infiniment. De rien, ça me fait plaisir. For you. Thank you. All right, let's drink wine.
So thank you very much. And yes, and now I have only one final thing to say. Thank you very much. And it's cocktail time. Join us. Thanks. Donc on se retrouve à la même salle que pour le lunch. So we'll be going back to the same room where we had lunch in Tabaré on the first one.